The morning sun cast purple light across the royal palace of Zathoria. Inside the Grand Council chamber, Queen Zaraketh sat on her throne, listening to her advisors argue about military positions and trade routes. She was a tall figure, her blue skin marked with silver patterns that showed her royal bloodline. Her forearms rested on the throne's armrests, and her eyes, deep black like the space between stars, watched everything with careful attention. The Valorian Empire stretched across 12 star systems. For 20 years, Zara had ruled with strength and wisdom. Her people were warriors, bred for combat and conquest. Every noble in the room had earned their position through battle. Every advisor had commanded fleets or armies. Every person except one. Marcus Chen stood quietly near the back wall, his human form small compared to the towering Valorians. He wore simple clothes, not the military uniforms or ceremonial armor that filled the room. His dark hair was touched with gray at the temples, and his brown eyes were calm as he watched the proceedings. In his hands, he held a data pad showing garden irrigation schedules. "The border fleets need reinforcement," War Minister Cravan growled, his voice like grinding stone. He was the largest Valorian in the room, his body covered in scars from 100 battles. "The ZHKar collective grows bold. They test our defenses weekly." "Then we respond with strength," another advisor said, slamming a fist on the table. "We show them Valorian steel." The discussion continued, voices rising. Marcus made a small note on his data pad about the orchids in the Eastern Garden. They needed more nutrients. He had noticed the leaves turning slightly yellow yesterday. Cravan's eyes fell on Marcus. A cruel smile crossed his face. "Perhaps we should ask the Queen's pet gardener for his military advice. Tell us, human, how would you defend the Empire? With flowers?" Laughter rippled through some of the younger nobles. Marcus looked up and smiled gently. "I think flowers need good soil, steady water, and patience, War Minister. Perhaps empires are not so different." "Patience?" Cravan spat. "Spoken like someone who has never held a weapon. Tell me, gardener, have you ever fought for anything in your life?" "That's enough," Zara said, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. The room fell silent. "Marcus is my husband and your prince consort. You will show respect." Cravan bowed stiffly, but his eyes held contempt. "Of course, my queen, I forget myself." Marcus caught Zara's eye and gave a small shake of his head. "It's fine," the gesture said. He was used to this. 3 years of living in the palace had taught him that most Valorians saw him as weak, a curiosity, proof that their mighty queen had grown soft in her later years. "If you'll excuse me," Marcus said quietly, "the morning watering cycle begins soon." He left the chamber, and behind him he heard the whispers start. They always did. She married beneath her station, a human with no warrior's blood. He tends plants like a servant. Marcus walked through the marble corridors, past guards who barely glanced at him, past nobles who stepped aside with barely hidden smirks. He didn't mind. Let them think what they wanted. He had learned long ago that being underestimated was a gift. The Eastern Garden was his sanctuary. It stretched across 3 acres, a miracle of green life on a world that had once been all stone and metal. Marcus had spent 3 years transforming this space. Earth plants grew beside Valorian flowers. Trees from a dozen worlds reached toward the purple sky. Water features bubbled peacefully, and the air smelled of jasmine and something spicy from the Kentari bushes in the corner. He knelt beside a row of tomatoes, checking the soil moisture with his fingers. This was real. This was honest work. His hands, which had been clean this morning, were now dark with rich soil. "Good." "They mock you," a voice said behind him. Marcus didn't turn. He recognized the footsteps. "They've mocked me since the day we married Zara. Why should today be different?" The Queen of Valoria knelt beside him, heedless of the dirt on her ceremonial robes. Her primary hands reached out to help support a sagging tomato vine. "Does it not bother you?" Should it? Marcus tied the vine to a support stake with practiced ease. I know what I am. What they think doesn't change that. Zara was quiet for a moment, watching him work. This was why she loved him. In a life filled with violence and political games, Marcus was peace. He was simple kindness. He asked for nothing except to be allowed to grow things and love her. Sometimes I wonder about your past, she said softly. You came to that agricultural colony 5 years ago, but from where? You never speak of it. Marcus smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. I was a soldier once, a long time ago. Then I decided I wanted to grow things instead of destroy them. What kind of soldier? The kind who's glad to be a gardener now. He stood and offered her his hand, pulling her up. The past is past, Zara. I'm here now, with you. In this garden, that's all that matters. She studied his face, seeing the lines around his eyes, the small scar on his chin that he'd never explained. There were mysteries there, but in 3 years of marriage, she had learned not to push. Marcus would share when he was ready. I love you, she said simply. I love you too, he kissed her forehead, even if your war minister thinks I'm useless. You're not useless. I know, these tomatoes would die without me. He grinned at her and she laughed, the sound like bells. They spent the morning together in the garden, talking about small things. Marcus showed her a new species of flower he was cultivating, a hybrid between earth roses and Valorian fire blooms. The petals shifted from red to gold in the light. It's beautiful, Zara said. It's temperamental, Marcus corrected. It needs exactly the right amount of water, the right temperature, the right soil pH. Too much of anything, and it dies. Like an empire, Zara said thoughtfully. Marcus looked at her with surprise, then smiled. Maybe, I wouldn't know, I just grow flowers. They walked back to the palace for the afternoon meal. Guards stood at attention as the queen passed. They barely noticed Marcus walking beside her, carrying a basket of fresh vegetables from the garden. In the dining hall, nobles gathered for the state lunch. Marcus took his place beside Zara at the high table. Conversations washed over him. Talk of fleet movements, trade disputes, political marriages. He ate quietly, sometimes offering Zara a small comment that made her smile. Craven sat further down the table, drinking heavily. His voice carried. In my grandfather's time, the consort of a queen commanded armies. Now we have one who commands cucumbers. More laughter. Marcus continued eating his soup. Under the table, Zara's hand found his and squeezed. He squeezed back. It's fine, he tried to tell her. Let them laugh. But that night, alone in their chambers, Zara held him close. You shouldn't have to endure their disrespect. Marcus stroked her hair gently. I knew what I was getting into when I married you. A human gardener and the warrior queen of Valoria. We were always going to raise eyebrows. Sometimes I wish they could see you as I see you. And how's that? As the strongest man I've ever known. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Strength isn't always what it looks like, Zara. I know, she whispered. But she didn't know, not really, not yet. Outside their window, the moons of Zathoria rose into the night sky. In orbit above, ships moved in their patrol patterns. Everything seemed peaceful. Everything seemed safe. It wouldn't last. The alarm started at dawn. Marcus was in the eastern garden, checking the morning dew on the leaves, when the first explosion rattled the palace walls. He looked up sharply, his body going still in a way that had nothing to do with gardening. That sound. He knew that sound. Orbital cannons. His data pad lit up with emergency alerts. The palace communication system crackled to life. All personnel to defensive positions. We are under attack. This is not a drill. Marcus was already running before the announcement finished. Not toward shelter, toward Zara. The palace erupted into chaos. Guards rushed through corridors, their armor clanking. Nobles screamed and ran for the fortified inner chambers. Servants scattered in panic. Above, the sound of ship engines roared as the attackers broke through the planetary shields. Marcus moved through the chaos like water through stone, his path deliberate and efficient. He reached the throne room in under 3 minutes. Zara was already there, surrounded by her royal guard, barking orders into a communication device. "How did they breach the shields?" she demanded. "Unknown. My queen," the defense grid simply, "failed in 3 sectors simultaneously." "Inside sabotage," Marcus said quietly, appearing at her side. Zara turned. "Marcus, you need to get to the bunker." "How many ships?" "This isn't the time." "How many ships, Zara?" She stared at him. Something in his voice was different, harder. 15 cruisers, heavy assault class. They're landing ground forces in the city. Marcus nodded, processing. "Show me the tactical display." "Marcus, show me." A guard activated the holographic display. Red markers showed enemy positions surrounding the palace. Blue markers showed Valorian forces, outnumbered and being pushed back. Marcus studied it for 10 seconds, his eyes moving across the display with practiced efficiency. "They're funneling you," he said. "Look at the pattern. They're pushing your forces away from the palace, creating a corridor. They're coming here." "We can see that," Cravan growled, appearing in the doorway with a squad of elite warriors. For once, his voice held no mockery. "The question is what we do about it." "Fortify the inner chambers," Marcus said. "Pull back to defensible positions. They'll have breaching charges for the outer walls." "And how would a gardener know that?" Cravan said, his suspicion rising even in crisis. Marcus didn't answer. An explosion, closer this time, shook the palace. Dust rained from the ceiling. "They're here," Marcus said softly. The outer walls came down with a roar of fire and metal. Through the smoke, figures emerged. Pirates. The Bloodfang corsairs, identifiable by the red markings on their armor. They were a mixed-species force, the worst criminals and killers the galaxy had to offer, united under one banner of greed and violence. The royal guard met them at the palace entrance. The sound of weapons fire echoed through the halls. Plasma bolts scorched ancient marble. Bodies fell. "Fall back," Zara commanded. "Controlled retreat to the throne room." The guard obeyed, fighting as they withdrew. But the pirates were too many, too aggressive. They had known exactly where to hit, exactly when. This was planned. In the throne room, Zara's remaining guards formed a protective circle around her. Maybe 40 warriors, against the hundreds pouring into the palace. "Marcus, please," Zara said, trying once more. "Go to the bunker. I can't fight if I'm worried about you." Marcus looked at her, and for a moment his expression was unreadable. Then he smiled, that gentle smile she knew so well. "I'll be fine, I promise." He slipped away into the side corridors before she could stop him. The battle reached the throne room 5 minutes later. Pirates poured through the doors, weapons blazing. The royal guard fought with desperate courage, but they were being overwhelmed. Bodies fell on both sides, but for every pirate that died, 2 more appeared. Then the real enemy walked in. Drakmar was massive, even by pirate standards. His armor was covered in trophies from his victims, medals, jewelry, pieces of royalty from a dozen worlds. He carried a heavy plasma axe that glowed with deadly energy. "Queen Zaraketh," he said, his voice booming, "I've heard so much about you." "Leave my world, pirate, and I might let you live," Zara replied, her own weapon drawn. Drakmar laughed. "Brave words from someone surrounded. I'll give you a choice, your majesty. Surrender now, become my trophy wife, and I'll spare most of your people. Or resist, and I'll burn this world to bedrock." "I choose to see your head on a spike." "Disappointing." Drakmar raised his axe. "Kill them all, take the queen alive." The pirates surged forward. The royal guard fought with everything they had, but it wasn't enough. Warriors fell. The circle around Zara grew smaller. Cravan himself was bleeding from 3 wounds, still fighting with savage determination. Zara prepared for the end. At least she would die fighting. Then the east wall exploded. Not from enemy fire, from inside. The blast was precise, surgical, taking out a section exactly large enough for one person to enter. Through the smoke, a figure moved. Marcus stepped into the throne room, and he was different. He held a weapon Zara had never seen before, something human, black metal and deadly efficiency. His movements were no longer those of a gentle gardener. They were fluid, economical, precise. A pirate turned toward him, raising a weapon. Marcus moved, 3 shots so fast they sounded like one. The pirate dropped. 2 more pirates charged him. Marcus didn't retreat. He advanced. His movements were poetry and death. He ducked under the first swing, fired twice into vulnerable armor gaps. The second pirate got close enough to grab him. Marcus broke the grip with a technique that looked simple but clearly wasn't, redirected the pirate's momentum, and put 3 rounds through the back of his helmet. It took 8 seconds, 3 pirates dead. The room went silent for a heartbeat. Marcus walked forward, stepping over bodies with practiced ease. His eyes swept the room, cataloging threats, calculating angles, processing information faster than should be possible. "You," Drachmer breathed, his eyes wide with sudden recognition. "No, they said you were dead. They said the Reaper retired." Marcus said nothing. He just kept walking forward, weapon raised. "Retreat," Drachmer screamed. "Fall back now." The pirates, who moments ago had been pushing for victory, suddenly broke. They scrambled for the exits, climbing over each other in panic. Drachmer himself turned and ran, his bravado evaporating like morning dew. Marcus let them go. He walked through the throne room, checking corners, making sure no threats remained. His movements were automatic, trained into his bones by thousands of hours of practice. When the room was secure, he lowered his weapon and turned to Zara. She was staring at him like she'd never seen him before. "Are you hurt?" Marcus asked, his voice back to its usual gentleness. "Who?" Zara's voice failed. She tried again. "Who are you?" Marcus looked at her for a long moment. Around them, the royal guard stared in shock. Cravan had dropped his weapon, his face pale with recognition and fear. "You never asked what I did before I became a gardener," Marcus said quietly. Outside, sirens wailed as Valorian security forces arrived to secure the palace. Ships overhead engaged the retreating pirate cruisers, but in the throne room, everything was still. Zara took a step toward him. "The Reaper, Drachmer called you the Reaper." Marcus nodded slowly. "That's a legend, a human ghost story, the soldier who couldn't be killed, who ended the border wars single-handedly, who—" She stopped, understanding crashing over her. "That's you." "It was me," Marcus corrected. "A long time ago." "How long ago?" 5 years. I retired 5 years ago, went to that agricultural colony to find peace, to grow things instead of destroying them." He looked at the weapon in his hands and his expression was pained. "I didn't lie to you, Zara, I didn't want to be that person anymore." Zara's 4 arms hung at her sides. Her mind was reeling, trying to reconcile the gentle man who grew tomatoes with the warrior who had just moved through trained killers like they were children. "You let them mock you," she said slowly. "All this time, you let them call you weak." "Because I am weak now," Marcus said. "That person Drachmer recognized. I buried him. I wanted him to stay buried." "You saved us." "I did what I had to do." Zara crossed the distance between them in 3 strides. She grabbed him, pulling him close. "You're trembling." "I know," Marcus whispered. "I hate this. I hate being him again." She held him tighter. Around them, the royal guard stood silent, witnessing their queen comfort a man they had dismissed as irrelevant, a man who had just demonstrated combat skills beyond anything they possessed. "We need to talk," Zara said finally. Marcus nodded against her shoulder. I know. The palace medical bay smelled of antiseptic and burned metal. Marcus sat on an examination table while a Valorian medic checked him for injuries. He had a few cuts, some bruising, but nothing serious. The medic worked in silence, stealing glances at him like he might explode at any moment. Zara watched from across the room, her arms folded, her expression unreadable. She hadn't said much since they left the throne room. Just ordered everyone to secure the palace and followed Marcus to medical. "You're clear," the medic said finally, stepping back quickly. "No serious damage." "Thank you," Marcus said softly. The medic practically ran from the room. Silence stretched between them. Outside, cleanup crews worked to repair the damaged palace. Security forces searched for saboteurs. The pirate ships had fled the system, leaving behind their dead and wounded. "Talk to me," Zara said finally. Marcus took a breath. "What do you want to know?" "Everything. Start at the beginning." He nodded slowly. "I joined the military when I was 18. Earth was at war with the Krill back then. Insectoid species, very aggressive. They saw humans as prey. Someone had to fight them. And you were good at it." "I was efficient at it. There's a difference." Marcus stared at his hands. "I moved up through special operations, made a name for myself. By the time I was 25, I was leading deep strike teams. The kind of missions nobody talks about. The kind where you go places that don't officially exist and solve problems that officially never happened." Zara listened, her eyes never leaving his face. "They called me the Reaper because I always completed the mission, always came back. Lost a lot of teammates over the years, but I always survived." His voice dropped. "Started to seem unfair, everyone around me dying while I lived." "How many missions?" "Classified, but hundreds, over 15 years. Marcus looked up at her. "I fought in the border wars, helped end the Synthid uprising, was present at the Krill incursion final battle. Every major conflict humanity faced, I was there somewhere, usually behind enemy lines doing things that would give people nightmares." "How many did you kill?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know the exact number. Thousands probably, maybe more." Zara absorbed this. Her gentle husband who worried about plants and smiled at children. Thousands. "What made you stop?" "A mission went wrong 12 years into my career. We were supposed to extract a political prisoner from a Krill station. Intelligence was bad. We walked into an ambush." His hands clenched. "My whole team, 8 people, best soldiers I ever worked with, dead in 15 minutes. "But you survived." "I survived. I always survived." The bitterness in his voice was sharp. "I completed the mission, got the prisoner out, killed everyone in that station. Then I went back to command and resigned." "They let you go." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No, they tried to stop me. I had too much value, too many skills, but I was done. I told them either I walk away or I eat my gun. They let me walk." He stood and moved to the window, looking out at the damaged gardens below. "I spent a year in therapy, trying to figure out who I was when I wasn't killing people. Then I found a job at an agricultural colony. Middle of nowhere, just me and plants. No weapons, no missions, no death. And then you met me." "And then I met you." He turned to face her. "You were on a diplomatic visit. You came to tour the gardens. You seemed so tired, so weary, all that responsibility on your shoulders. We talked about flowers for 2 hours. You laughed at my jokes. For those 2 hours you weren't a queen, you were just Zara. And you weren't the Reaper." "I was Marcus the gardener. That's who I wanted to be. That's who I still want to be." Zara moved to stand beside him at the window. Their reflections looked back at them from the glass. "You never told me any of this. You never asked directly. When you asked about my past, I said I was a soldier. That wasn't a lie. I just didn't elaborate. You let me think you were weak." "I am weak," Marcus said firmly. "The Reaper was strong. The Reaper could kill 100 people without blinking. The Reaper never hesitated, never doubted. But Marcus is afraid of hurting people. Marcus has nightmares about the things he's done. Marcus just wants to grow tomatoes and love his wife. That's weakness in your world. It's not weakness, Zara said quietly. It's humanity. Marcus looked at her, surprised. I've ruled for 20 years, she continued. I've commanded armies. I've made decisions that cost thousands of lives. And I'm tired, Marcus, so tired. When I met you, you were the first person in decades who didn't want something from me, who didn't see me as a queen or a weapon or a political tool. You just saw me. I still just see you, Marcus said. And I'm trying to just see you, but it's hard. Zara's voice cracked slightly. 3 years we've been married. How could I not know? Because I'm good at hiding. It's what I was trained to do. Don't, Zara turned to face him fully. Don't use that voice, that tactical, mission-focused voice. Talk to me as my husband, not as a soldier. Marcus took a breath and let it out slowly. When he spoke again, his voice was softer. I was afraid that if you knew what I'd been, what I'd done, you wouldn't love me anymore, that you'd see the blood on my hands and turn away. Do you think I'm that shallow? No, but I think I'm that broken. Zara reached out and took his hands in hers. They were rough hands, scarred in ways she'd never questioned before. Now she understood where some of those scars came from. Listen to me, she said. I don't care what you were, I care what you are. And what you are is the man who makes me laugh, who tends gardens because it brings him peace, who held me when my father died, who reads to the palace children, who makes terrible jokes at breakfast. That's who I married. That man used to kill people for a living. That man chose to stop. That man chose peace. That man chose me. Zara squeezed his hands. Choice matters, Marcus. You could have kept being the Reaper. You chose to be a gardener instead. Today, I had to be the Reaper again. To save lives, including mine. Marcus nodded slowly. When I heard those alarms, saw the attack pattern, knew you were in danger. I didn't think. I just moved. All that training, all those instincts I tried to bury, they came back like I'd never stopped. Does that frighten you? Yes, because it was easy, too easy, like putting on an old coat. He met her eyes. What frightens me more is that part of me missed it, the clarity, the purpose. When you're in combat, everything is simple, threat or not threat, survive or die. No politics, no complicated emotions, just action. But you don't want that life. No, God, no. I want my gardens. I want lazy mornings and your terrible singing in the bath. I want to be bored by council meetings and argue about which curtains to put in the dining room. I want normal. Zara smiled despite everything. My singing isn't terrible. It's pretty bad. This from a man who can't dance. I can dance, I just choose not to. They stood together, the tension easing slightly. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now the galaxy knows the Reaper is alive, and married to me, Zara sighed. That will have consequences. I know. Drakmer will tell people, other enemies will know, some will be frightened, others will see it as a challenge. I'm sorry. Don't apologize for saving us. Zara turned him to face her fully. But I need to know something. Can you go back to being just a gardener, or is that person gone now? Marcus thought about it carefully. I don't know. Today proved that the Reaper isn't as buried as I thought, but I don't want to be him. I'll fight if I have to protect you and this world. But I won't go looking for fights. I won't become that person again. Promise me. I promise. I'm your husband first. Everything else is secondary. Zara pulled him close, holding him tight. I love you, past, present, all of it. We'll figure this out together. Together, Marcus agreed. But even as they held each other, both knew the truth. The secret was out. The peaceful life Marcus had built was cracking, and somewhere in the darkness of space, Their enemies were learning that the warrior queen of Valoria had married the deadliest human in the galaxy. That night Marcus returned to their chambers and found his old military footlocker in the back of the closet. He hadn't opened it in 5 years. Inside were things he'd hoped never to touch again. Weapons, equipment, mission reports sealed in encrypted files. At the bottom, under everything else, was a photograph. 8 people in combat gear smiling at the camera. His team, the one he'd lost. Marcus stared at the photo for a long time. "I'm sorry," he whispered to the faces. "I'm sorry I survived. I'm sorry I tried to forget. I'm sorry I have to remember now." He closed the footlocker and pushed it back into the closet, but he didn't lock it this time. He had a feeling he was going to need it again soon. 3 weeks after the pirate attack, Marcus was back in his garden. The tomato plants had suffered during the battle, but he was nursing them back to health. It was early morning, the purple sun just rising, and for a brief moment everything felt normal. Then he felt eyes on him. Marcus didn't look up from his work. He kept pruning the damaged leaves, his movements steady. But every combat instinct he possessed was screaming. Someone was watching, someone trained. "You can come out," he said calmly. "I know you're there." Craven stepped from behind a tree, looking uncomfortable. The war minister had barely spoken to Marcus since the attack. When he did, the mockery was gone, replaced by something that looked like respect mixed with fear. "How did you know?" Craven asked. "You're breathing too hard, and your armor clicks when you move." Craven looked down at his ceremonial armor, surprised. "I thought I was being quiet." "You were for a Valorian." Marcus finally looked up. "What do you want, War Minister?" The intelligence reports came back about the pirates. Craven moved closer, his voice low. "They were hired by the ZH-Car Collective." Marcus went still. The ZH-Car were serious enemies, not pirates or raiders, an actual military power with resources and planning. "Drakmer talked?" Marcus asked. "We captured 3 of his officers. They broke under questioning. The ZH-Car paid them to test our defenses, to test the Queen." Craven paused. "They were told to kill you specifically, called you a weakness, the Queen's soft spot." Marcus returned to his pruning. "I see. They know now what you are. Drakmer is spreading the story across every pirate station and black market in the sector. The Reaper is alive. The Reaper married the Valorian Queen." That was inevitable. "Some species are terrified. Others," Craven hesitated, "others see it as a challenge, proof that you're not as dangerous as the legends say. After all, the Great Reaper retired to grow flowers." Marcus smiled without humor. "Let them think that." "I came to apologize," Craven said suddenly. "For 3 years I mocked you, called you weak, called you a pet. I was wrong." "You weren't wrong. I am weak compared to what I was. You saved the Queen. You saved all of us. I did what needed doing, nothing more." Craven studied him. "The men are asking questions. They want to know about the Reaper, about your missions, your kill count. Tell them it's none of their business. They want to train with you, learn from you." "No," Marcus's voice was firm. "I'm not a teacher. I'm not a soldier. I'm a gardener who had one bad day. More bad days are coming. The ZH-Car won't stop." Marcus looked at him directly. "Then your soldiers better be ready, because I'm not fighting their war for them." Craven nodded slowly and left, but his words stayed with Marcus. More bad days are coming. That evening there was a state dinner. Foreign dignitaries celebrating the defeat of the pirates. Marcus stood beside Zara in the great hall, wearing formal clothes he hated, smiling at people who looked at him with new eyes. No more dismissive glances. Now they stared with curiosity, fear, respect. He hated it. The Drellian ambassador approached, her crystalline body reflecting the lights. "Prince Consort Marcus, I must say, your reputation precedes you now. The Reaper, how exciting." "I prefer to talk about gardens, ambassador." Of course, but you must have such stories. The border wars alone. Excuse me, Marcus said politely, extracting himself from the conversation. He found a balcony and stepped outside, breathing in the cool night air. Zara joined him a few minutes later, hiding, strategically retreating. She laughed. Everyone wants to meet you now, the mysterious human warrior. I want to go back to being mysterious Marcus the gardener. I don't think that's possible anymore. Marcus knew she was right. The dinner continued behind them, but out here, it was just the two of them and the stars. I've been thinking, Zara said, about what happens next. The ZH car won't stop with one failed attack. No, they'll probe, test, learn our weaknesses. Which means we need to be ready. Marcus looked at her. What are you asking, Zara? I'm not asking anything, I'm just thinking out loud. But her eyes said differently. They were interrupted by an urgent message. One of the royal guards approached, his face pale. My queen, we have a situation. 3 bodies found in the servant quarters. How did they die? Zora asked sharply. Unknown, no visible wounds, they just stopped. Marcus's blood went cold. Show me. The bodies were in a storage room, 3 servants who'd been preparing for the dinner. Marcus knelt beside them, studying everything carefully. No marks, no signs of struggle, but their faces were frozen in expressions of terror. Poison? Zara asked. No, Marcus examined one woman's neck, finding the tiniest puncture mark. Void wraiths. The guards around them tensed. Void wraiths were the ZH car's elite assassins, enhanced warriors with cloaking technology and neurotoxin injectors. Almost impossible to detect, incredibly deadly. Here in the palace, Craven had arrived, his weapon drawn. How? They've been here for days, probably, studying patterns, learning routines. Marcus stood, his mind racing through possibilities. They killed the servants to take their uniforms, which means they're still here, probably 3 of them. We need to evacuate the state dinner, Zara said. No, Marcus said sharply. That's what they want, chaos. In confusion they strike. Then what do we do? Marcus closed his eyes, thinking. Void wraiths were good, maybe the best assassins in the galaxy, but he'd fought them before during the border wars. He knew their tactics. They'll go for you during the dinner. Maximum witnesses, maximum political impact. They'll strike from 3 directions simultaneously, using the crowd as cover. You can't know that. It's what I would do. Zara stared at him. This was the Reaper talking now, not Marcus the gardener. Cold, calculating, thinking like a killer. We go back to the dinner, Marcus said. We act normal, but I need you to trust me. I trust you. Stay close to me. When it happens, drop flat, don't try to fight, just drop. They returned to the dinner. Marcus scanned the room, looking for anything out of place. A servant moving wrong. A guard standing in a non-standard position. Anything. There, a waiter near the north entrance, his movements just slightly off. Too fluid, too controlled. There, a guard near the south door, standing 1 foot differently than regulation stance. There, a servant by the kitchen entrance, carrying a tray but not looking at it. 3 positions, perfect triangulation on where Zara would be standing. Marcus positioned himself slightly behind Zara, his body relaxed but ready. He made small talk with a nearby noble, appearing calm while his mind calculated distances and angles. The Drellian ambassador was mid-sentence when Marcus felt the shift in the air. That subtle change in pressure that meant cloaking technology had just activated. Zara down. He shoved her to the ground and moved. His hand went to a serving fork on the nearby table, throwing it in one smooth motion. The fork flew toward seemingly empty air and struck something solid. Sparks erupted as the cloaking field disrupted, revealing a void wraith in mid-strike. The second assassin appeared behind him. Marcus spun, catching the wraith's knife hand and redirecting it. The neurotoxin injector stabbed into the wraith's own leg. The assassin fell, paralyzed by his own weapon. The third wraith was good. He adjusted, going for Zara on the ground. But Marcus was already there, his movements faster than should be possible. He caught the wraith's wrist, broke it with an efficient twist, and put the assassin into the marble floor hard enough to crack the stone. The entire fight took 6 seconds. The hall erupted into chaos. Guards rushed forward. Nobles screamed. Zara pulled herself up, staring at Marcus, who stood over 3 unconscious assassins like it was the most normal thing in the world. "Is everyone all right?" Marcus asked calmly. Craven could only nod, stunned. Later, after the dinner was evacuated and the assassins secured, Zara found Marcus back on the balcony. He was staring at his hands like they belonged to someone else. "You saved me again," she said. "I almost didn't see them in time." "But you did." Marcus turned to her and his eyes were haunted. "I'm good at this, Zara, too good. It scares me how easy it was to slip back into that mindset, to think like them." "You're not them." "I'm close enough." Zara took his hands. "You use those skills to protect people, that's the difference." "Today, but that instinct, that tactical mind, it's still there. Stronger than I thought. The Reaper isn't as buried as I wanted to believe." "Then maybe he doesn't need to be buried. Maybe he just needs to be controlled, directed." Marcus looked at her carefully. "What are you saying?" "The ZH car will come again in force, we both know it." Zara's voice was steady. "And my military, brave as they are, isn't prepared for the kind of war the ZH car will bring. But you are." "Zara, I'm not asking you to become the Reaper again. I'm asking you to teach, to share what you know, to help prepare my people for what's coming." She squeezed his hands. "Not as a soldier, as an instructor, on your terms." Marcus was quiet for a long time. In the distance, ships moved across the sky, patrolling, protecting, but it wouldn't be enough. The ZH car were coming, and when they did, they'd bring everything. "If I do this," Marcus said slowly, "I do it my way. I choose who I train, I choose the methods, and when it's over, I go back to my garden." "Agreed." "And you accept that training soldiers means some of them will die. I can make them better, but I can't make them invincible." "I know." Marcus looked up at the stars. "I retired for a reason, Zara, because I was tired of sending people to their deaths." "I know, but right now not training them means more will die." He knew she was right, hated that she was right. "All right," he said finally. "I'll do it, but this doesn't make me a soldier again. I'm still just a gardener." Zara smiled sadly. "A gardener who saves empires. A gardener who wants his wife to live." They held each other on the balcony as night deepened. Tomorrow, Marcus would begin the hardest thing he'd ever done, train people for war while trying to stay at peace himself. But tonight, he was just a man holding the woman he loved, pretending for one more moment that the galaxy wasn't about to burn. The training facility was built in the eastern section of the palace grounds, far from the gardens Marcus loved. He designed it himself, though it hurt to do so. Obstacle courses, firing ranges, tactical simulation rooms, everything he'd hoped never to see again. 50 warriors stood at attention before him. The best of the Valorian military, elite guards, special forces, decorated veterans. They looked at Marcus with a mixture of respect and skepticism. Yes, he was the Reaper, but he was also human, small compared to them, and he'd spent 3 years growing tomatoes. "My name is Marcus," he began, his voice carrying across the yard. "Not sir, not instructor, just Marcus. You're here because your queen thinks I can teach you something. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. But for the next 6 weeks you belong to me. Anyone who can't handle that, leave now." No one moved. "Good, first lesson. Forget everything you know about honor in combat." That got their attention. Valorian culture prized face-to-face combat, honorable duels, standing your ground. Honor is beautiful, Marcus continued. Honor is poetic. Honor will also get you killed. The ZH car don't care about honor. They care about winning. So we're going to learn to fight like them. Dirty, efficient, whatever it takes to survive and complete the mission. A warrior in the front row spoke up. We are not cowards who hide in shadows. You're right, you're not, which is why you'll die when the ZH car come. Marcus's voice was harsh. They will hide, they will ambush, they will use every dirty trick in existence, and you'll be standing there with your honor while they put a knife in your back. Then we are no better than them, another warrior said. Marcus smiled without warmth. Exactly. In war there are no good guys, only survivors and corpses. Which do you want to be? The training was brutal. Marcus pushed them harder than they'd ever been pushed. He taught them asymmetric warfare, guerrilla tactics, psychological operations, how to move silently, how to kill quickly, how to use the terrain, the shadows, everything as a weapon. He taught them that fair fights were for idiots. The warriors hated it at first. It went against everything they believed. But slowly, they began to understand, began to see how human combat doctrine, forged in hundreds of desperate conflicts, offered advantages their honor-based training didn't. Zara watched sometimes from a distance. She saw Marcus move through the warriors like a ghost, correcting stances, demonstrating techniques, pushing them beyond their limits. She saw the hard edge in his eyes, the tactical mind working constantly. She also saw how he looked at the end of each day, exhausted and hollow. At night, he would return to their chambers and stand in the shower for long periods, as if trying to wash something away that soap couldn't touch. "How is it going?" she asked one evening. "They're learning, some faster than others." "I meant, how are you?" Marcus was quiet. "Every technique I teach them is something I used to kill people. Every tactic is built on someone's death. I'm giving them tools of murder and calling it protection." "It is protection." "Maybe, but it doesn't feel like it." 4 weeks into training, the intelligence reports changed everything. The ZH car were coming, not probing attacks, not assassins. A full invasion fleet, 300 warships, 3 planetary assault armies. They would reach Valorian space in 10 days. The War Council met in emergency session. The numbers were devastating. Even with all their forces, Valoria was outnumbered 3-1. "We can hold the capital for 2 weeks, Craven said, studying the tactical displays. "Maybe 3 if we're lucky. After that, we're overwhelmed." "We need reinforcements from our allied systems," another general argued. "They're already committed. The ZH car are attacking on multiple fronts. This isn't a raid. It's a coordinated invasion of our entire empire." The council descended into arguments. Zara listened to her generals debate strategies that all led to the same conclusion: defeat. Slow, bloody, inevitable defeat. Marcus stood in the corner saying nothing, but his eyes tracked the tactical displays, his mind processing information. "What about a preemptive strike?" someone suggested. "Hit their fleet before they reach us." "With what?" Craven gestured at the displays. "They have 3 times our ships. We'd be slaughtered in open space combat." "Then we're already dead," the general said flatly. "No," Marcus's quiet voice cut through the argument. Everyone turned to look at him. "You're not dead, you're just thinking about this wrong." "Enlighten us, Prince Consort," Craven said. There was no mockery now, only desperate hope. Marcus stepped forward to the display. "You can't win a conventional war. You're right about that, but who said you have to fight conventionally?" He manipulated the display, highlighting the ZH car command carrier at the center of their fleet. This is their weakness. The ZH car military doctrine emphasizes centralized command. All orders flow from this ship. All tactical data is processed here. Every ship in that fleet is networked to this central hub. "We know this," a general said impatiently. But that carrier is surrounded by 60 warships. We can't get to it. You can't, but a small team could. The room went silent. Marcus continued, his voice taking on that cold, tactical tone Zara had learned to recognize. A stealth insertion during their final approach. 10 people, maybe 12. Get aboard the carrier, eliminate their command staff, and introduce a virus into their network. Chaos ripples through the entire fleet. Ships lose coordination. Smaller groups break formation. Then your conventional forces hit them while they're confused. That's suicide, someone said. Probably, Marcus agreed, but it's the only chance you have. Craven leaned forward. Could it work? I've done it before. Different enemy but same principle. Cut off the head, the body dies. You would lead this mission. Marcus hesitated. This was it. The moment he'd been dreading. He could say no. Let someone else do it. Go back to his gardens and watch the empire fall around him. Or he could be the Reaper one more time. He looked at Zara. She wasn't saying anything, but her eyes pleaded with him, not for the empire, for their life together. Yes, Marcus said quietly, I'll lead it. The room erupted in discussion. Who would go? What equipment? What timeline? Marcus answered questions mechanically, his mind already planning the mission down to the smallest detail. Later, in their private chambers, Zara finally let herself show emotion. You don't have to do this. Yes, I do. Send someone else, train someone else to lead it. In 10 days, no one else has the experience, no one else has done something this insane and survived. Marcus took her hands. It's what I'm good at, Zara, what I've always been good at. I don't care about good, I care about you coming back. I'll come back. You can't promise that. You're right, I can't. Marcus pulled her close. But I can promise I'll do everything possible to make it happen, because I have a garden to get back to, and a wife who apparently can't sing. My singing is fine, she said, her voice breaking. It's really not. She hit him lightly, then held him tighter. I love you. I love you too. The 10 days passed too quickly. Marcus selected his team, the 12 best students from his training program. Young, skilled, and willing to die for their queen. He drilled them constantly on the mission profile, every step, every contingency, every possible failure point. On the final day, Zara found him in the garden one last time. He was checking on his tomato plants, making notes about their care. Instructions for while I'm gone, he explained. They need water every 2 days, not too much. The orchids need misting, and the Kentari bushes need their soil pH balanced. Marcus. I'm coming back, Zara, but just in case, someone needs to know how to care for them. I don't care about the plants. I know, but I do. He stood and faced her. They're proof that I can create something instead of destroying. They matter. Zara pulled him into a kiss, deep and desperate. When they broke apart, both had tears in their eyes. Come back to me, she whispered. Always. The mission launched at midnight. A stealth ship, barely large enough for 13 people and their equipment. They flew through ZH-car space for 18 hours, dodging patrols, using every trick Marcus knew to stay invisible. The command carrier loomed ahead, a massive ship surrounded by escorts. Getting aboard required timing measured in seconds. One mistake and they'd be vaporized. Marcus breathed slowly, centering himself. This was it, the Reaper one last time. On my mark, he said into his comm. 3, 2, 1, go. They breached the hull using cutting charges, exactly where Marcus had calculated the sensors would be blind. Inside, they moved like shadows. Guards died silently. Security systems were bypassed. The team worked with mechanical precision, everything Marcus had taught them coming together. They reached the command deck. The ZH-car High Commander stood before tactical displays, directing the invasion. He turned as the doors exploded inward. Impossible, he said, seeing Marcus. You're just a gardener now, just a washed-up killer playing in the dirt." Marcus raised his weapon. "I'm a gardener, but if you threaten my garden, I pull the weeds." The firefight was brief and brutal. The ZH-Car command staff fell. Marcus uploaded the virus into their systems personally, watching it spread through the fleet's network like poison through veins. "Virus active," he reported. "Pull back, mission complete." They fought their way back to the insertion point. 5 of the team didn't make it. Marcus felt each loss like a knife to the gut. His students, his responsibility. But they completed the mission. Outside, the ZH-Car fleet descended into chaos. Ships broke formation. Communication networks failed. The centralized command structure collapsed, leaving individual captains confused and isolated. The Valorian fleet struck like a hammer. Without coordination, the superior ZH-Car numbers meant nothing. Ship after ship fell. The invasion collapsed into a rout. Marcus and his team were extracted just as the command carrier exploded. Back on the stealth ship, covered in blood and exhausted beyond measure, Marcus allowed himself one moment of weakness. He put his head in his hands and shook. "Sir," one of his students asked, "we won." "7 people dead," Marcus said. "That's not winning, that's just surviving." 3 days later, the ZH-Car formally surrendered. The threat was over. The Empire was saved. Marcus stood in his garden, staring at the tomato plants that had been cared for in his absence. Someone had done a good job. The leaves were healthy, the soil perfect. Zara found him there, as she'd known she would. She didn't say anything, just held him from behind, resting her head against his back. "It's over," she said finally. "Is it?" "The ZH-Car have sued for peace. The Council wants to make you war prince, give you command of all military forces." "Tell them no." "I did. I told them you're a gardener." Marcus turned in her arms. He looked older, she thought. The weight of the mission had aged him in ways that showed beyond his face. "I'm done," he said. "That was the last time. No more missions, no more war. I'm staying here in this garden for the rest of my life. I won't ask you to do anything else, I promise." They stood together among the plants, 2 people who had seen too much violence finding peace in growing things. The palace guards had a new respect for the prince consort. The nobility no longer mocked him. Children of the palace listened to his stories with wide eyes. Visiting dignitaries spoke to him with careful courtesy, aware of who he really was. But Marcus ignored all of it. He tended his garden. He taught palace children about plants. He made terrible jokes at breakfast that made Zara laugh. He was, in every way that mattered, exactly who he'd always wanted to be. Some evenings, Zara would find him in the training facility he'd built, sitting alone in the empty space, staring at nothing. On those nights, she would sit beside him silently until he was ready to return to their chambers. The nightmares came sometimes, the faces of people he'd killed, the students he'd lost, all the blood he could never wash away. But Zara held him through those nights, reminding him that he was more than his past. 6 months after the war ended, an official document arrived from the ZH-Car, a formal request for peace talks. They asked specifically that Prince Consort Marcus Chen attend as proof of Valorian good faith. Marcus read the request and smiled without humor. "They're terrified I'll come out of retirement." "Will you go?" Zara asked. "Yes, but only to tell them the same thing I told you. I'm a gardener. I'm done with war." At the peace conference, Marcus sat beside Zara, wearing formal clothes and looking completely out of place among military officers and political leaders. The ZH-Car delegation stared at him with barely concealed fear. "Prince Consort," their lead negotiator said carefully, "your reputation precedes you." "I grow tomatoes," Marcus replied, "and orchids, the orchids are temperamental." The negotiator blinked, unsure if this was some kind of threat. "Yes, of course. We wanted to assure you that the ZH-Car Collective seeks only peace." Good peace is better than war. Lets people focus on important things, like gardening. The treaty was signed. Peace settled over the sector. The ZH car kept their distance from Valorian space, and the Empire prospered. And in the gardens of the royal palace, Marcus Chen tended his plants. Sometimes noble children would ask him about the war, about being the reaper, about the missions he'd led. I was a soldier once, he would tell them. But that was a long time ago. Now I'm a gardener, which is much better because gardens don't shoot back. But you saved the empire, they would insist. I did what needed doing. Then I came back to what I love. That's the important part, not the fighting, the coming back. Zara would watch these exchanges from a distance, her heart full. She ruled an empire of warriors, but she'd married a gardener, a man who had been the galaxy's deadliest killer and chose to grow flowers instead. That choice, she thought, was the bravest thing she'd ever witnessed. On clear evenings, they would sit together in the garden as the sun set, talking about nothing important: council politics, new plant species, the terrible curtains someone had suggested for the dining room. I love you, Marcus would say. Even though I'm a terrible singer, Zara would tease. Especially because of that. And in those moments, the Reaper was truly dead. Not buried, not sleeping, but transformed. The hands that had dealt death across a dozen worlds now nurtured life. The mind that had calculated 1,000 ways to kill now planned irrigation schedules. Marcus had been a soldier. He had been a killer. He had been the thing that nightmares feared. But now he was a gardener married to a queen. And that, he thought as he held Zara close beneath the stars, was exactly who he wanted to